All right, I think to make the most of everybody's time, we will jump in. My name is Cristina Martinez, and I have the honor of serving as the Long-Term Recovery and Major Initiatives Director for Adams County. I have several of my colleagues on with me today, and I'd like for us to do a round of introductions. And Alicia, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alicia Reese. I'm Deputy County Manager here at the county.
Jason, then Tyra.
Hi, I'm Jason Schultz. Thanks for being with us today. I'm the Deputy Director for the Information Technology and Innovation Group.
Hi, I'm Tyra Litsu. I'm the Deputy Finance Director.
And then Matt and Kylan, please.
My name is Matt Gorenz. I'm Constituent Services Liaison in the County Manager's Office.
I'm Kylan Mueller. I'm a Management Analyst in the County Manager's Office.
Thank you all for joining us today and being available to respond to questions that we may get throughout the event. So just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping and logistics. So I'm going to run through a PowerPoint presentation. Throughout the PowerPoint, if you have questions that come up, you can submit those using the Q&A button. You'll see that down on the bottom, kind of towards the middle that says Q&A. You can just type in questions throughout. And then our team will go through all those questions at the end. And then at the end, we'll also open it up so that if you would like to verbally ask questions, you have that opportunity as well using the raise hand feature, and Kylan will be facilitating that portion of the presentation for us. So with that, I will jump right in and give me a moment to pull up the slide deck. And I can't, let's see. Sorry, y'all, I cannot. There we go. Okay, so, today we are here to talk about the brand new Adams County COVID-19 grant program that's being funded through the American Rescue Plan Act funding through the state and local government fiscal recovery fund. So today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the funding itself, who should apply, when to apply, how to apply, our funding criteria, and then the priorities that have been identified by our federal partners, our governor, as well as the Board of County Commissioners here in Adams County. And then, as I mentioned, at the end, we'll open it up to a Q&A session. And just as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be posted online for others to be able to view at a later date as well. So the American Rescue Plan Act funding was passed earlier this year by Congress for a total of $350 billion to be invested across the United States. Colorado is receiving $3.8 billion. So our governor and legislature are responsible for determining how to invest those dollars. And then Adams County itself is receiving approximately $101 million directly. So that is what we are here talking about today, is a portion of those dollars and how they will be invested in our community. So there are two tranches of funding, two different distributions that the county is receiving. We have received $50 million to date of our $101 million allocation, and our Board of County Commissioners has decided to allocate the first $50 million in this way. So $35 million will be going into an external open competitive grant application process. $10 million will be invested in internally identified projects and priorities. And then $5 million will be set aside as contingency. As we know, COVID has continued to evolve, as has the need for our response. And so we wanted to ensure that if there were any twists or turns or changes in the coming months, that we would be able to respond accordingly and have the resources to do so for our community and for our residents. So diving into the $35 million that are available through the grant program, I'm sure you're wondering who's our target audience? Who should be applying for these dollars? And you can see on the screen that we're trying to cast as wide of net as possible. We know that Adams County has one of the highest rates of essential workers across Colorado. We know that there are needs today that continue to be unmet. And the board really wanted to make sure that organizations from across the community had the opportunity to submit their projects and proposals for consideration. So we're hoping that businesses of all sizes, non-governmental organizations, nonprofit organizations, school districts, and special districts will all consider submitting applications for the grant program. The timeline for the program is right now we're doing our informational webinar stage. So over the next week and a half, we're going to be having sessions like this that are topic based. The content of the presentation will be the same, but I'm sure the questions that we're receiving will be slightly different based on who our participants are on each call and the projects and proposals that they're thinking about putting forward. So that's going to be through October 28th. I do want to note as well that on Friday the 28th, we will be having a Spanish language session. And so that will be more of a general, anybody from any type of interest area is welcome to join that webinar. On November 1st is going to be the first day that the application period opens. That's when the grant application will go live on our website and folks can start submitting applications at that point. It'll be a 30-day application period with the application process closing on November 30th. And our hope is, over the following couple of months to review applications and then have determinations from the Board of County Commissioners in early 2022, when then we'll proceed with contracts with the successful applications. As I mentioned, the application will go live on November 1st. Where can you find that application? It's going to be on the Adams County website. So adamscountycovid19.org. I'm sure that all of you have accessed that website over the last year and a half to find resources and learn what the county is doing in response to COVID. So that is where, once again, we'll be directing folks to submit applications as well as access additional resources that we have available and are in the process of continuing to develop. Do want to flag as a little disclaimer that the submission of a grant application is not a guarantee of funding. This will be an open competitive process. We will be ranking and scoring applications and proposals, and the board will ultimately be deciding how those dollars are invested and allocated. So what's the funding criteria? We have 4 different tiers of criteria that you'll see in the application. The first is, and foremost, are our federal requirements. There is a federal rule that is determining how we are able to invest these dollars in response to COVID. The next is our governor has identified 4 priority areas in response to COVID. There's some work that's happening at the state level that I'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in a few slides. And then we have our county goals. Really, those are the goals that the county has operated on and will continue to work towards for the health, safety, and well-being of Adams County residents. And then lastly, the county has also identified COVID-19 specific priorities. So we're going to ask our folks to take a look at all of these and help us understand which of these various priorities your project or proposal will be working to identify and address. So starting with the federal funding criteria, there's 2 really big important pieces that everybody needs to be aware of. Number 1, the project or proposal really needs to identify a need or negative impact of the COVID-19 public health emergency and how the program, service, or other intervention will address the need or impact. This is a COVID-19 specific grant program. So we just want to make sure that as you're thinking about applications, that you really remember that it has to be centered on the impacts of COVID and how your work will help address those impacts. The funds must be requested as to say it another way, in response to COVID-19 or the harmful consequences of the economic disruptions resulting from or exacerbated by the COVID-19 public health emergency. And most importantly, it must also serve Adams County residents. We are not going to be funding projects that serve residents of counties outside of Adams. We really, need to ensure that our dollars are going to help community members. There are other jurisdictions that have received their own funding or will be accessing other dollars. So that doesn't mean that an organization can't have a program that serves additional counties. We just need to ensure that our dollars are going directly towards and for Adams County residents. So, we're going to continue emphasizing that, must have endured negative economic impact due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Organizations must be in good standing with state and local taxes, any licensing, whether that's at the state level or federal level, and be in compliance with any applicable local codes and ordinances. We also ask that folks be in good standing with the Colorado Secretary of State, and then that you also share any other governmental, private, or charitable assistance that you've received. We're also going to be asking, this is a newer request from the board, that if you're receiving other Adams County funds, that you note that as well, whether it's related to this project or not, just to make sure that we have a good understanding of the type of support that we have provided and could potentially provide your organization in the future. And then lastly, that national, state, or local elected office holders with business interests will not be eligible for funds. So what are these federal priorities? There's 7 different areas, and these are the expenditure codes that are outlined in their compliance and guidance document that can be found on the Treasury website. As folks are applying, we're going to be asking you to identify which of these expenditure codes your project will address. There has to be at least one. There could be more than one depending on your project. So the first category is public health. And as you can see, there's multiple examples of the expenditure codes under there. The second is negative economic impacts. This is more so around household assistance, unemployment. I'm sure that we're going to have folks that are interested in the aid to nonprofits, the aid to businesses. As you can see, those are 2.10 and 2.9 respectively. And then other impacted industries. And then we also have category number 3, are services to disproportionately impacted communities. This is focused around education, healthy childhood environments, housing, and then social determinants of health. The fourth is premium pay. This is really for public sector employees only. And then there is also for 4.1, and then 4.2 is for our private sector partners. I want you to be mindful that if this is something that your organization is considering applying, this cannot supplant what you would have already paid somebody, whether that was in the past or what you will pay them in the future. This is really above and beyond salary and benefits that are already offered to those employees. So it's an additional premium pay. The next, I'm sure we'll have many questions and interested partners on this particular session, is around infrastructure. And you can see that the federal government has identified clean water as one of the main priorities, drinking water, as well as broadband. The next is revenue replacement. That is more of an internal expenditure code if the county decides to pursue that. And then number 7 is administrative, again, for the county and some of our other units of government. So what about the governor's priorities? There are 4 COVID priorities that the governor has identified. You can see them listed, as well as the structure that is being used to identify potential investment ideas to recommend to the governor as well as the legislature. So we're anticipating legislation to be pursued during the 2022 session regarding all 4 of these priority areas. I want to emphasize that if projects and proposals do not fall within the governor priorities, you will not be penalized. This is a way for us to collect information and identify potential leveraging opportunities if your project or priority is related to affordable housing, behavioral health, mental health, workforce development, higher ed, or economic recovery and relief. So again, this does not preclude you from being competitive. This is another data point that we're looking to gather and be supportive if your project falls within these 4 areas. The next, we have our Adams County goals. This is what we work on a day-to-day basis as Adams County. And we want to make sure that the investments through the COVID-19 grant program are supporting our larger organizational goals as well. You can see those outlined here, and we'll have more robust descriptions on the website as well as within the application that detail what this actually means from an operational perspective and organizational perspective for the county. The next are our COVID-specific county grant funding priorities. So there are 10 of them. You can see them listed here on the slide deck. How did our county commissioners come up with these? In May of 2019, the county commissioners actually chaired, as did several of our key staff members, 7 different working groups that were identified that were comprised of other governmental organizations, key stakeholders, community leaders to provide immediate response to COVID. Those groups met for just under 8 months, and then through that work, through those efforts, through the priorities that were identified, these are the 10 areas that the county commissioners really felt that they wanted to focus on and really give a competitive advantage to projects that are focusing on these 10 categories. Same disclaimer applies for these funding priority areas as did for the governor's priorities. As long as a project meets the federal requirements, it will be considered and scored and ranked among all applications. I do want to highlight as well, kind of the blue bar that you'll see at the bottom of the slide. These priorities really are built on a foundation of equity and putting people first. And how are we going to impact people through the work, the projects, the proposals that you all are thinking about? And how are we going to do this in the most equitable way possible? And you'll see in a later slide how that's being implemented from an application process. So here we have our focus on equity, as I was mentioning. We're going to be asking some questions that perhaps organizations may or may not have had to provide with other funders. So really going to think, if you're a nonprofit, for example, if you have a board, what's your board and staff demographics? Do you have people of color? Do you have are there various genders represented on your board? So really to do some reflection of who you are as an organization and what you look like from a leadership perspective. If you're a business, we would also like to know what the ownership demographics are. This is also going to play into our scoring. We want to ensure that women-owned businesses, Black, Indigenous, and people of color-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, that we are really working towards equity. And from what that will mean from a scoring perspective is that they will get additional points if this information is provided and they fall within those categories. We're also going to be asking folks to think about what specific inequities this work will address. So as you're developing your project and proposal, think about who are you going to be serving, and is it the folks that are in the most need that we know have been disproportionately impacted by not only historically, but it's been exacerbated by COVID. So communities of color, low-income communities, certain neighborhoods within Adams County. So really think about that. How is this work going to address the inequities that exist? Who are you looking to serve? And then how are you deciding who you're going to serve? I think that for some, this will be a little more applicable. Our businesses serve anybody who walks through their doors. We completely understand that. But there are other organizations that are really targeted with the work that they do. So if you're, for example, a water and sanitation district, what do your clients look like? What census tracts are you serving? And really want you to be able to help us understand why your project should be funded and who is going to benefit by that investment. Also, how you engage with the community you serve. What type of meaningful outreach do you do? And how does the feedback and input from the community contribute to the proposal that you all are looking to submit? once we go through the scoring process, once we identify who we're going to be partnering with to do some really exciting work, comes the fun reporting requirements and legal requirements. So wanted to make sure that folks understood from a reporting process what's going to be expected. So there's going to be monthly financial reports that will be submitted. We're going to be working closely with our finance and budget team. Tyra's here representing that team on the call today to make sure that from a financial perspective, we're able to meet the audits that we know that the federal government will do. And we have the data and information that we need to submit the reports that we have to our federal funders as stewards of these dollars. We're also going to be working with you all on data reports. We want to understand who's being served, how many folks are being served, what are the outcomes that you're seeing based on the work that you're doing. We'll be meeting with grantees individually to figure out what makes the most sense. Jason, who's on the line, has been a part of that subcommittee who is really working to identify our performance metrics. And those will serve a couple of different purposes. As I already mentioned, it will be for the financial reports that we provide to the federal government, but also public dashboards that we'll be creating so that members of the public can see how these dollars are being invested and the impact that they're having on our community. We'll also be asking everybody to sign a legal agreement with Adams County that will outline this amongst other requirements, such as making documents available if we were ever to be audited, how long you have to keep those documents, and other standard contractual language. Along with this, we'll also we'll be doing contract monitoring, which will require site visits out to your team, to your business, and we'll determine that on a grantee by grantee basis, as well as the cadence. So wanted to provide you all with some links to some resources. The first is the link to the website where you will be able to find the application, our FAQs, as those are continuing to be developed. And then the next is the Treasury website. This is where you'll find the compliance and reporting guidance. This is where most of the information from an oversight perspective is being pulled. This is the document that I personally have found most helpful for me. There's a number of other documents, including the interim final rule. And I do want to flag for those of you that may be closely following what Treasury is doing, we still don't have the final rule, but we have received guidance that as long as we are acting in good faith with the current rule as written, that we're allowed and encouraged to proceed with the programs and investment of dollars. The Department of Local Affairs, which is the Colorado State agency, they also have a really handy spreadsheet that I encourage you to look at that has additional sources of funding available. We have OEDIT's website link there, and then the National Association of Counties they've also developed a very good repository of national resources. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look at that. And then the Government Alliance on Race and Equity is dedicated to really focusing on equity. They have some very good resources that might be helpful to you as you're thinking about how you're going to respond to some of those equity-focused questions from your organization's perspective. And I'm going to end it there. Here's my contact information. Here's my cell phone number and email address. I'll leave this up just for a moment so that you can jot those down. Feel free to reach out in whatever way is most convenient for you. Feel free to text me on that phone number as well. And then I'll open it up to our verbal questions. And it looks like we've had one question come throughout the presentation. So I will stop screen sharing, and myself and the entire Adams County team are available for any questions at this point. So Kylan, I'll turn it over to you to facilitate our questions.
She may have stepped away for a second, but I'm happy to do it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that.
Our first question is, are applicants able to submit multiple submissions for various projects?
Yes. So as long as they are different projects with different scopes of work, absolutely, you're able to submit as many applications as you would like. And we actually encourage that, take a look at the various priorities that have been set out by the feds and our county and the state. Yes, please submit those applications. Are there any participants that have a question? If so, could you click the little raise hand feature? And I hope, Matt, you're able to see that because I cannot. Or type in the Q&A box and we can call. Oh, Elliot. Can we take Elliot? Can we allow Elliot to unmute? There we go.
Hello. Thanks
Hi.
for my question. Yes, I'm calling in from Maker. And if you could point me in the direction of looking up like what the allowable cost would be in general. I saw the links, but I haven't had time to go in there yet, but I guess specifically like things like real property acquisition or land acquisition, or I know affordable housing is one of the topic areas. Does that go as far as saying like we want to purchase, like a lot of land and develop a affordable housing community, or is that not something that would be like a allowable service or program activity?
So you all are our first session. So I'm realizing a couple of key pieces of information that I did not include in the slide deck. So Elliot, thank you for helping me remember that, and I will fix that for our next slide deck. So couple of things. We do not have a minimum or a maximum amount for our grant application program. So if you want to come in for what some would consider a smaller project for $5,000, thinking about a small business who may need to do some modifications to make it a safer work environment. If you want to come in for $1 million project, you're able to do that as well. So the thing to be mindful of, Elliot, is that we would like these dollars, they have to be spent by December of 2024. So I will include those dates as well in the updated slide deck of when we have to spend down the money. And property acquisition is not excluded, but we do need to make the case how it's specifically tied to COVID and how this will help address the impacts of COVID. So I would just kind of put that out there of we want creativity, we want folks to think outside of the box and think about what are those kind of really impactful projects that could take place, as long as they are addressing the impacts of COVID and that we can show how the project itself is addressing those inequities.
Sure, great, thank you.
Carolyn, anybody else want to add anything to that?
We have one question typed in the box.
Okay.
That is, what do you anticipate the average grant award will be?
No idea. I also don't know how many we're going to get. We might get 100, we might get 1,000. What we will see. And I think that what we know is we have $35 million available, and it's going to be a really tough decision. I know there's going to be a lot of good projects and proposals that are going to be coming through. And so we don't know what the average amount is. As I mentioned, there's no minimum or no maximum. So we're going to be seeing a wide variety of asks from a financial amount as well. But happy to share that out once the county has made its decisions on who's getting funding. Are there other questions or comments? Anybody want to raise the hand or submit another written question through Q&A? Okay, colleagues, is there anything that I missed that you all want to share with our participants today?
Nothing from me. No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason. All right, well, with that, we'll give you a little bit of time. As I mentioned, feel free to reach out to me. And if I can't answer your question, we have a pretty phenomenal team that's here, as well as others that weren't able to join us, that together we can work to get you the answers that you need moving forward. So please feel free to share this information wide and far. We want everybody who's interested to have the opportunity to submit an application. And thank you for joining us today, and hope you all have a lovely afternoon.